Good evening. Thank you for joining us. I'm Heidi Alaga. Tonight's presidential debate, the first time Vice President Kamala Harris and former President Donald Trump have met face to face. You just saw it here on ABC and KGUN 9. The candidates answering questions on key issues like the economy, the events of January 6th, and of course, the border.
I imagine and have actually a plan to build what I call an opportunity economy. Because here's the thing. We know that we have a shortage of homes and housing, and the cost of housing is too expensive for far too many people. We know that young families need support to raise their children.
We're doing tariffs on other countries. Other countries are going to finally, after 75 years, pay us back for all that we've done for the world, and the tariff will be substantial in some cases.
Now to the latest polls on Arizona voters from 538 who partnered with ABC. It shows that Donald Trump is narrowly ahead of Kamala Harris by just 0.8%, well within the polls of margin of error. Now you can see here day by day they have tracked how close this race has been. But as we fast forward to today, September 10th, that's where it currently stands between the two candidates. It is just getting closer and closer, making tonight's debate all the more important. Our Maria Staub spoke with more people to get reaction from tonight's debate.
Elected officials on both sides of the aisle tuned into the presidential debate, posting their own live reactions on social media. I spoke with Senator Mark Kelly, who tells me who he thinks gave the best case on who should be elected this November.
Kamala Harris, she gets it. Donald Trump, he just wants to talk about problems, doesn't want to solve them.
Kelly referring to a moment during the debate where Vice President Kamala Harris criticized former President Trump for rejecting a bipartisan border bill introduced by lawmakers earlier this year.
Kamala Harris made it very clear that if given the opportunity, if we can get that legislation passed, and I believe with Donald Trump out of the picture, that we will be able to do that. We'll get the legislation passed. She'll sign it into law. That's going to be a big win for Arizona.
Meanwhile, the Arizona Republican Party took to Facebook saying it was former President Donald Trump who won the debate, saying he, quote, proved tonight why he's the leader America needs. Kamala Harris couldn't defend her disastrous record, and voters know the truth. Trump won and America will win, end quote. Shortly after the debate, the Harris campaign called for a second presidential debate against former President Trump. In the studio, Maria Staubs, KGUN 9.
Well, our KGUN 9 team was at watch parties across town on both sides of the aisle. Alex Dowd was at the Harris Waltz Arizona watch party on the south side at America Eats Company. And Andrew Christensen is in Midtown at Wilbur's Grill for the Pima County Republican Party. Here's what attendees at both of these events had to say after tonight's debate.
People are filing out of the Pima County Democrats debate watch party here on the south side of Tucson, and energy is just as high as when people came in, if not a little bit more. This is a stark contrast to what we saw back in June at the past Democrat debate watch party with President Biden. When Harris spoke, there were applause and cheers, while Trump got laughter and jeers.
The things that they say about me.
Organizers of the event say that about 75 people showed up tonight. Most of the viewers here said that they wanted to see Vice President Harris stand up to the former president, especially if he made claims about the 2020 election being stolen. When it came to policy, the big ticket issues here weren't a surprise. Reproductive rights, the economy, and immigration. Everyone I talked to here said that Harris won on all of those issues.
I think even the Republicans themselves would have to admit that Kamala is kind of wiping the floor with Donald Trump. She's laying out bait, talking about crowd sizes, about loans he took when he entered college.
Though they did want to see a little bit more on issues that would affect Arizonans.
I think Arizona has a fascination with minimum wage. I think that's always been a very big thing, and they haven't touched on that in the debate just yet, and I really am hoping that they do.
This was the first time that both candidates met each other for a debate, and both said that they are open to future debates. One hasn't been set yet. From the America Eat Company, Alex Dowd, KGUN 9.
So I was here at the beginning of the year covering the presidential preference race, and there were a lot more Trump supporters during the debate, and they tell me that they feel like President Trump won the debate. Now, when I asked them about how he did compared to when he debated President Joe Biden, one of the supporters I talked to thinks the last debate was more fair when CNN moderated than ABC, who moderated Tuesday's debate. But she says tonight Trump came in with some strong points. Now, when he talked about the economy, the Trump supporters I spoke with tell me he really stressed what he's been asking people during during his campaign, and that's, are you better off than you were 4 years ago when he was president?
I know what Trump did 4 years ago. I know what he did. Most people know what he did. We didn't suffer like we have now. And so people just have to think about that. And Harris is still under this administration.
And I also asked supporters about how Trump performed when asked about the border and immigration. And a couple who moved here from Pennsylvania a few months ago told me the border was even an issue over there, saying they feel like Trump really exemplified that it's a problem not just in one state. Now, one thing that Harris repeatedly said during the debate is that she feels like the country cannot go back to a Trump administration. The Trump supporters I spoke with here tell me they really cannot go back to an administration with Harris in it. And of course, I'll have more on our website, KGUN9.com. Reporting on Broadway and Swan, Andrew Christensen, KGUN 9.
Truth be told, fact checks claims made by the presidential hopefuls on the campaign trail. And tonight we're looking at health care. Vice President Kamala Harris says former President Donald Trump wants to end the Affordable Care Act, also known as Obamacare. That would impact millions of Americans. But does that claim check out? Truth be told, here's Patrick Terpstra.
What would former President Donald Trump do with the Affordable Care Act if elected to another term? Truth be told looks at a frequent claim by Vice President Kamala Harris that Trump would get rid of the law.
If Donald Trump were to win in November, he intends to end the Affordable Care Act. He intends to end the Affordable Care Act.
Former President Donald Trump has a long history of opposing the Affordable Care Act, or Obamacare, which now provides health coverage to a record 21 million Americans. While in office, when the law was less popular than it is now, Trump and fellow Republicans repeatedly tried and failed to dismantle President Obama's signature legislative achievement. Trump still has no love for Obamacare.
It stinks. It's not good.
Last December, he pledged on his social media platform to come up with a much better and less expensive alternative to the Affordable Care Act. Then, in a video posted in April, he backtracked, saying he would preserve the law unless he can improve it, a line he repeats on the campaign trail.
I'm going to keep the Affordable Care Act unless we can do something much better. We'll keep it. She goes around saying, oh, he's going to get rid of the health. No, I'm going to keep it unless we can come up with something that's better for you and less expensive for you.
Trump has never provided specifics about the changes he would make. We rate the claim that Trump intends to end the Affordable Care Act as mostly false. Truth be told, after years of trying to repeal the law, Trump now says he would keep it while trying to make it better, but he hasn't presented any details on what specifically he'd do. For Truth Be Told, I'm Patrick Terpstra.
Well, former President Donald Trump will be making his way to Tucson on Thursday. He went to Cochise County last month, but this is his first campaign stop in Tucson since the 2016 election. KGUN 9's Eddie Salaya is looking into the city's venue policy change and finds out how much it'll be collecting for Thursday's rally.
Ahead of former President Donald Trump's visit to Ronstadt Music Hall Thursday, city officials are confirming that, unlike in 2016, a deposit was received up front to secure the city-owned venue.
According to a City of Tucson statement, a new policy was put in place after the 2016 election that now requires payment to use facilities up front. The change is meant to avoid situations like 2016, where Trump's and Bernie Sanders campaigns left the city on the hook for more than $81,000 and $44,000, respectively. For Thursday's rally, the city confirmed it collected a deposit from the Trump campaign totaling $145,222.70.
Now, a Tucson fire official confirmed to me that there will be 2 units accompanying the Trump motorcade, and the department will also be here on hand for any medical emergencies. From the Ronstadt Music Hall, I'm Eddie Salaya, KGUN 9.
Plus, second gentleman Doug Emhoff, husband of Vice President Kamala Harris, will also be visiting Tucson on Thursday. The time and venue have not yet been announced. As Vice President Kamala Harris took to the national stage for tonight's debate, Democrat vice presidential candidate Tim Walz was campaigning in Phoenix. It's his first solo campaign trip. Earlier today, he was speaking to students at a coffee shop, telling them that it's important for them to be engaged in politics and to cast their vote. His visit comes after Senator J.D. Vance spoke at 2 August events in Phoenix.